Hello and welcome back to BookTube with Jenny Luez. It's been a minute, as it seems to have been the case for the last several months, right? But this time I've been gone for a few weeks because of a medical vacation that was necessary for me to take. I've been putting it off for about a decade, waiting for my kids to get older where they're a little more independent and can assist and help because I still have about 3 more weeks where I can't lift a thing. Anyway, it has been nice to relax, and because I've been able to relax, I've gotten some reading done. One of the books that turned out to be a super fast read over the last couple weeks that I was able to dive into was The Shack by William Paul Young. I give this book 4 stars. For me, this book gets a 4-star rating because a lot of the dialogue to me seemed a bit ingenuine, not quite true to life. Not so much when the conversation was flowing between a father and his kids, per se, or a father and friends, but more so when it came to the main gist of the text, where the main character in the book is having conversations with God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Those to me just seemed a little off. Of course, who are we to judge? I mean, he is talking to God the Father, the creator of all things. Who's to say what normal would be? Now, The Shack is actually a book that's been around, and it was super popular in its heyday. I believe there was a movie also that has been made from this book. I have not watched the movie, so this is not a comparative between what's better, the book or the movie. And to be honest, because of the subject matter, I don't think I would choose to watch the movie. When The Shack first came out, I was a new mom. And the people in my Bible study who were reading the book and at different stages of their own life's journey told me that they didn't think I should read it. And now that my oldest is 15 and diving into it now, I agree with their assessment that new parents should not read this book. As new parents, you're already fearful of the what ifs and doing your best to keep that baby alive, and not just alive, but thriving and meeting their milestones and doing your best to protect them. You already know the evils that are in the world. And so a book like The Shack reinforces our fears instead of alleviating them. And for that reason, I don't think that new parents should read this book. For those that don't know the premise, I'm going to go ahead and read the back to you now. Mackenzie Allen Phillips' youngest daughter, Missy, has been abducted during a family vacation, and evidence that she may have been brutally murdered is found in an abandoned shack. 4 years later, in the midst of his great sadness, Mac receives a suspicious note, apparently from God, inviting him back to that shack for a weekend. Against his better judgment, he arrives at the shack on a wintry afternoon and walks back into his darkest nightmare. What he finds there will change Mac's world forever. In a world where religion seems to grow increasingly irrelevant, the shack wrestles with the timeless question, where is God in a world so filled with unspeakable pain? Answers Mac gets will astound you and perhaps transform you as much as it did him. You'll want everyone you know to read this book. When it first came out, The Shack would have been revolutionary in that God is presented as a woman. God is presented as a woman at first. Later in the book, he transforms into a man. I did like that because both men and women have come from the Father. If we're made in God's image, then that means that there are parts that are female and parts that are male, or parts that are feminine and masculine, that both reside in God the Father. And so for that reason, I did actually like that God the Father, Papa, was presenting himself in a way to the main character that would make the main character comfortable with him. The reason that the main character would be more comfortable with God the Father being a woman was because he had a troubled relationship when he was growing up with his own earthly dad. There are profound moments. I almost gave this book a 5-star. It is a book I'm going to keep on my bookshelf, even though parts of it still make me want to wrestle, or I still didn't feel like all the answers are answers that I wanted to hear. And it's a book you need to read carefully. It challenges you because of the subject matter at hand. It teaches about forgiveness and how to let things go. It brings about transformation. I think there is a great amount of genius in this book. And even if I don't quite agree 100% with everything presented, or even if I wish the author had gone a little bit deeper, a little bit further with some of the explanations, I thought as a whole it was amazing. Again, I just give it 4 stars because I do feel as though 5 stars shouldn't be handed out like candy. And reading it now, it's not as revolutionary now as it probably was when it first came out. The fact that it isn't the only book now on the market that portrays God as a woman. One of my absolutely favorite scenes is from chapter 7, God on the Dock. The first page there, which is 106. Jesus had dropped a large bowl of some sort of batter or sauce on the floor, and it was everywhere. Must have landed close to Papa because the lower portion of her skirt and bare feet were covered in the gooey mess. They were laughing so hard that Mac didn't think they were breathing. Sarah Yu said something about humans being clumsy, and all three started roaring again. Finally, Jesus brushed past Mac and returned a minute later with a large basin of water and towels. Sarah Yu had already started wiping the goop from the floor and cupboards, but Jesus went straight to Papa and, kneeling at her feet, began to wipe off the front of her clothes. He worked down to her feet and gently lifted one foot at a time, which he directed into the basin where he cleaned and massaged it. "Ooh, that feels so good," exclaimed Papa as she continued her tasks at the counter. As he leaned against the doorway watching, Mac was full of thoughts. So this was God and relationship. It was beautiful and so appealing. He knew that it didn't matter whose fault it was. The mess from some bowl that had been broken that a planned dish would not be shared. Obviously, what was truly important here was the love they had for one another and the fullness it brought them. He shook his head. How different this was from the way he sometimes treated the ones he loved. And I think that's a highlight for me, like one of my favorite passages, because it is awesome to see the Trinity in relationship with one another, to imagine what that truly could be like. And it paints a beautiful picture. Okay, I'm going to read a long passage from chapter 10, Wade in the Water, page 148 through 150. And the reason is because I love this depiction of relationship, of how God creating man and that woman comes from man, how it all relates in a circular pattern and the why behind it, and how it reflects the Holy Trinity. And I just found it profound. And that's one thing about this book. I could have given it 5 stars. Perhaps I'm being a little stingy. I do have a hard time sometimes giving into the popularity of something that perhaps is just a personal hang-up of mine. I don't need to jump on the party wagon, so to speak. I like to observe and watch and make my decisions differently. Submission is not about authority, and it is not obedience. It is all about relationships of love and respect. In fact, we are submitted to you in the same way. And this is Jesus talking about his relationships with Abba, Father, and Sarah, you, which is the Holy Spirit. Mac was surprised. How can that be? Why would the God of the universe want to be submitted to me? Because we want you to join us in our circle of relationship. I don't want slaves to my will. I want brothers and sisters who will share life with me. And that's how you want us to love one another, I suppose. I mean, between husbands and wives, parents and children, I guess in any relationship. Exactly. When I am your life, submission is the most natural expression of my character and nature, and it will be the most natural expression of your new nature within relationships. And all I wanted was a God who will just fix everything so no one gets hurt. Max shook his head, the realization, but I'm not very good at relationship stuff. Like Nan, his wife. Jesus finished the last bite of his sandwich and, closing his lunch bag, placed it down next to him on the log, wiped off a couple of crumbs that still adhered to his mustache and short beard. Then, grabbing a nearby stick, he began to doodle in the sand. As he continued, that's because, like most men, you find what you think of as fulfillment in your achievements. And Nan, like most women, finds it in relationships. Is more naturally her language. Jesus paused to watch an osprey dive into the lake not 50 feet from them and slowly take flight again, talons gripping a large lake trout still struggling to escape. Does that mean I'm hopeless? I really want what the three of you share, but I have no idea how to get there. There's a lot in your way right now, Mac, but you don't have to keep living with it. I know that's truer now that Missy's gone, but it has never been easy for me. You're not just dealing with Missy's murder. It's a larger twisting that makes sharing life with us difficult. The world is broken because in Eden you abandoned relationship with us to assert your own independence. Most men have expressed it by turning to the work of their hands and the sweat of their brows to find their identity, value, and security. By choosing to declare what's good and evil, you seek to determine your own destiny. It was this turning that has caused so much pain. Jesus braced himself with a stick to stand and paused while Mac finished his last bite and stood to join him. Together they began walking along the lakeshore. That isn't all. The woman's desire, and the word is actually her turning. So the woman's turning was not to the works of her hands, but to the man. And his response was to rule over her, to take power over her, to become the ruler. Before the choosing, she found her identity, security, and her understanding of good and evil only in me, as did man. No wonder I feel like a failure with Nan. I can't seem to be that for her. You weren't made to be, and in trying, you'll only be playing God. Mac reached down, picked up a flat stone, and skipped it across the lake. Is there any way out of this? So simple, but never easy for you. By returning. By turning back to me. By giving up your ways of power and manipulation and just coming back to me. Jesus sounded as if he was pleading. Women in general find it difficult to turn from a man and stop demanding that he meets their needs, provides security, protects their identity, and return to me. Men in general find it very hard to turn from the works of their hands, their own quest for power and security and significance, and return to me. I've always wondered why men have been in charge, Mac pondered. They all seem to be the cause of so much of the pain in the world. They account for most of the crimes, and many of those are perpetrated against women. And he paused. Children. Women, Jesus continues, picked up a stone and skipped it, turned from us to another relationship, while men turned to themselves and the ground. The world in many ways would be a much calmer and gentler place if women ruled. There would have been far fewer children sacrificed to the gods of greed and power. Then they would have fulfilled that role better. Better maybe, but it still wouldn't have been enough. Power in the hands of independent humans, be they men or women, does corrupt. Mac, don't you see how filling roles is the opposite of relationship? We want male and female to be counterparts, face-to-face equals, each unique and different, distinctive in gender but complementary, and each empowered uniquely by Sarayu, from whom all true power and authority originate. Remember, I'm not about performance and fitting into man-made structures. I'm about being. As you grow in relationship with me, what you do will simply reflect who you really are. But you came in the form of a man. Doesn't that say something? Yes, but not what many have assumed. I came as a man to complete a wonderful picture in how we made you. From the first day, we hid the woman within the man, so at the right time we could remove her from within him. We didn't create man to live alone. She was purpose from the beginning. By taking her out of him, he birthed her, in a sense. We created a circle relationship like our own, but for humans. She out of him. And now all the males, including me, birthed through her, and all originating or birthed from God. Oh, I get it, Max said, stopping in mid-throw. If the female had been created first, there would have been no circle of relationship, and thus no possibility of a fully equal face-to-face relationship between the male and the female, right? Exactly right, Mac. Jesus looked at him and grinned. Our desire was to create a being that had a fully equal and powerful counterpart, the male and the female. Your independence with this quest for power and fulfillment actually destroys the relationship your heart longs for. The Shack was definitely a good read, a challenging read, an insightful read, an in-depth read, something that could be discussed in a group setting, most definitely. Something that answers questions while also leaving some unanswered, because honestly, not everything will we find an answer for this side of heaven. And with that, I'm going to ask you one final thing. Please like this video, subscribe to this channel, ring the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. Thank you, friends. Until next time.